What's going on, everyone? We're here to return and revisit to our pulverizing druid builds that we originally theory crafted before the beta went live, but now that we've had a chance to get our hands on druid and had a full day getting into 25, farming for legendaries, getting what we could, we wanted to come back and revisit and talk about our experience with it a little bit, as well as the build variations that we also managed to learn along the way for it. Personally, from what I heard, a lot of people had difficulties with Druid while leveling, but I myself had an incredibly buttery smooth time leveling, but I'm also comparing that to my experience on Barbarian from last weekend, which was less than ideal, unless you ran a Bleed Thorns build. But overall, for me with my Druid, with Pulverize and Stormstrike, I had a very comfortable, cozy time, you know, all the way through my leveling. Didn't have any issues. I play all my characters on hardcore, so we got to 25. We didn't die. We did the campaign. We even killed the butcher. So, you know, I mean, what we ran was perfectly capable and comfortable of doing the content that is available. We're going to break down a storm variation of our Pulverize and a earth variation of our Pulverize. Now, the main issue that comes around with the Pulverize Werebear skill is, you know, around that core skill is it doesn't have good single target damage because you are fully reliant on those overpower hits that come in a definitive 10-second window. So you need something to make up for that 10-second downtime window. The fully earth formatted build for Werebear Druid with Pulverize that we've come up with has that filler space taken care of, no problem, with another core skill coming into play with Landslide. And then the Storm variant is supplemented with a lot of electrical overloading and lightning bolt striking that comes from procs and passive effects and hurricane, etc. So a lot of filler damage to supplement the downtime in between overpowers for Pulverize. Now, the first one I want to talk about right now is, you know, the builds for the most part aren't that different, but the starting skill that I used, no matter what, I use this for leveling all the way through, was Stormstrike. Out of all of the starting basic skills, I just don't see a reason to not use Stormstrike over any of the other ones. It has the highest spirit generation of all the basic skills, and they all have the same damage scaling or lower damage scaling than Stormstrike. So, you know, you look at Stormstrike, it's got 20% damage scaling, and then Claw and Maul both have 20% damage scaling, but they generate less spirit, and Claw is single target. Meanwhile, Wind Shear is AoE. It is a piercing projectile, but it has lower damage and it generates less spirit, but it does have stuff to increase that spirit count. I'll give it that. And then Earth Spike is lower, even lower damage scaling, and is much less spirit on it. But to couple up with that, there's two other things that Stormstrike has baseline without any investment that really puts it above any of the other basic generators, and that is it chain targets up to 3 additional targets. So you hit 4 targets with Stormstrike every time if you're in an AoE environment, and this is important for the lightning storm proc conduit effects that we're going to talk about for the build, as well as it provides a flat 25% damage reduction for 3 seconds. So switching in and out of storm striking and going into a Pulverize back to your storm striking, you're able to keep up this 25% damage reduction super easily, and all you got to do is basic attack for it, and there's no investment required. But to go with that, you know, Stormstrike also then immobilizes as well as applies vulnerability. This vulnerability applies all the time. It's on a 50%, which is really high. But the immobilization also happens pretty frequently because of how often you're able to attack, and you're going to immobilize somebody because you have a 15% chance across 4 targets. So pretty good odds there, especially when hitting multiple times. Now, going down from there, we take the first one, Pulverize. This is going to be a very comfortable skill for you to use while leveling. It has a huge AoE. It's larger than the Hammer of the Ancients AoE with its aspect power. and it has decent scaling, not crazy scaling, but decent scaling for itself. But right now, actually, with our limited point investment, we're not going to put a bunch of ranks into Pulverize. We are going to put points into the Overpower, which we get every 10 seconds while we remain above 80% HP, which is really easy to do on Werebear Druid gameplay. And then we're going to take the enemies are stunned for 2 seconds with Overpower when they get Overpower Pulverized. Now, the reason why we're not going to put a bunch of points into Pulverize is because we're going to put the points over here, and we're going to take 1 rank of Heart of the Wild and 3 ranks of Wild Impulses, which is going to make this skill cost a little more. It's going to make it cost 15% more, but it's going to increase the damage by 30%, whereas before, each individual rank of Pulverize only increased the damage by 5%. So we're actually getting a higher damage scaling increase by taking Wild Impulses than we are by cranking them into Pulverize. Now, this doubles up with going into Landslide here, which is going to be our secondary filler. Although you won't really need to take this until later on into the build, as there's not too much uptime needed for boss content or mobbing during the leveling stages of the game. So, you know, if you don't want to take Landslide early on, you don't have to. But if you do, Enhanced Landslide here is going to immobilize targets every 4 landslides, or every time Landslide does 4 damage. And it's going to, this is the big thing about it, when you immobilize or stun an enemy, you gain a Terror Mote. Storm Strike, Chain Lightning has a mobilization on it. Pulverize has a stun on it. Great. Those abilities are going to give you this Terror Mote, which is going to give you a guaranteed critical strike on your Landslide. And this can stack up to, 50 plus counts of Terror Motes. So you could have, 50 landslides at your disposal that are going to be able to benefit from this guaranteed critical strike damage. And then bosses always have a 10% chance to grant a Terror Mote just by hitting them normally. Now, this is all going to tie in when we get into the aspect powers, why we're using Landslide. This is going to basically be later on your filler spender, while Pulverize is generating the 10-second durational window. You're going to be able to spend filler on Landslide to get really big hits out of it. Down here for your defensives, you're going to run Earthen Bulwark. I talked about it being optional previously, what defensives you ran. Earthen Bulwark is too good. It's just way too powerful for you to not take, particularly with the aspect power. The aspect power makes it 9-second duration, and that's a really nice period of time to be able to have Unstoppable when you spec into it here, and it also generates Fortify for you. So that's really huge in itself. And the big thing here with the barrier is it's 50% of your base life, not your base life that you start with at level 1, but your overall base HP. So it's going to be close to around 50% of your health pool. I'm sitting at 550 HP on my Druid right now, and I don't even have like all my gems in that I could to increase my health. But this is 207. This is a 207 damage absorption shield. So that's really nice to have in terms of increasing your survivability on top of your Fortify that you're going to get. So really nice thing to have there. Really makes a big difference in a lot of situations. And 9-second duration for Unstoppable, and it's a 15 to 16 second cooldown. And that is, you're looking at a 6-7 second downtime for it. So that's really nice to have. Cyclone Armor, go to. Really great. It's just passive damage reduction that you get. It's 20% non-physical damage, but when you get the aspect power for it, it also applies to physical damage as well. So that's another 20+% damage reduction that you're getting just by having this skill slotted. Now, the active effects for it are nice as well. The knockback is great, and it also applies to slow, which counts as a CC. Innate Cyclone, this is going to also knock back and make them vulnerable. Vulnerability is great, makes targets take more damage. So if you're not getting the vulnerability on the 50% chance with Storm Strike here, you'll definitely get it with the Cyclone Armor. We skip companions again. Not really using companions with either of these builds that we're going to be talking about. And down here in the Wrath tree, we actually will take Trample. The Trample, we thought about before originally as a movement skill previously, but the trample is actually going to serve an alternate purpose, but it's going to be your only movement skill that you have. Keep in mind, if you're playing Druid, you're not very speedy, but trample is a movement skill that does have unstoppable, so it can CC break, and it will be able to crowd control the targets as well, knocking them into walls, stunning them, etc. So nice little thing to have there for it. And you're also going to be able to use it for spirit generation if you would like to. Now, something that was overlooked previously is in the storm build that I originally talked about, in the first build that I originally talked about, we had Hurricane. We're actually not going to take Hurricane for this Earth build variant. Instead, we're going to have Crushing Earth passives over here that we're going to invest into, which are Earth skills deal increased damage to slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back enemies. This should always be happening to something between Cyclone Armor, your Pulverize, your Storm Strike. So just damage modification increase, period, across the board for your Earth skills. This matters because you're going to be able to turn Pulverize into an Earth skill later with the aspect powers. Critical strikes with Earth skills will fortify you. So again, all your Earth skills that you use with the critical strikes, which Landslide has guaranteed critical strikes, you're going to be generating plenty of fortify. You should be maxed out fortify all the time. You don't even need to put extra ranks into this one later on. This one you'll want to put more ranks into. While you have fortify over 50% of your maximum life, your Earth skills will deal 4% increased damage, going up with each rank. So later on, as we get more points, you'll want to put multiple points into these two talents just to increase that Earth damage. Now, you're already looking at a full action bar. If you want to drop trample and you want to take an ultimate instead just to juice your damage more, maybe you don't feel like you need trample for a CC break or the spirit generation, you can take Petrify, the ultimate, over here. This is going to increase the critical strike damage that you deal to targets that you inflict with Petrify, and it says it's going to do it up to 50% on bosses, so that's a real nice big damage spike as well that you can get. Now, the situation where all of this comes together and what makes it so good, all right, is some stuff that we didn't talk about originally. But the first thing is, again, the Earthen Bulwark one increases the duration of it, and killing enemies resets the barrier amount. That's phenomenal. That's great. This is not required, but can be a nice aspect to get if you just need to fill it in or you haven't gotten all your pieces yet. Casting a storm skill, Storm Strike, will grant you critical strike damage for your Earth skills for a period of time. That's great. So you're just going to further increase that critical strike damage, which Landslide has guaranteed critical strike capability on it with the Terra motes. Casting an Earth skill will increase the critical strike chance of storm skills. Cool. That's just, a little extra something on your Storm Strike. From there, we're going to go down here, and if you want to, I don't recommend this because you already have plenty of other slow, but damage from Earth skills will slow enemies. If you just want to always have the enemy be slowed, you can. Now, this is a big one for Landslide. Landslide's damage is misleading. It has the largest tooltip damage of your core skills. However, it's across multiple hits. Landslide functions with a double hit animation, and if it hits with both animations, it's a really good amount of damage. If it only hits the target with one pillar, it's not as great. This aspect makes Landslide's Earth pillars strike a second time each and deal % bonus damage per hit. That's awesome, having Landslide hit even more frequently, because when you are using regular Landslide juiced up, it's legitimately hitting for about as hard as Overpower Pulverizes are, which is so, you're able to spam this in between, the downtime on your Pulverize. So, you get that Pulverize Overpower, you use your Storm Strike to generate some Spirit again, then you can go and use Landslide twice, Storm Strike again a little bit, and build some more resource up again, Landslide, and then you should have a Pulverize available again, once 10 seconds pass, go for that Pulverize. And so you're using Landslide to fill that downtime, because Pulverize isn't really that hard hitting outside of its guaranteed overpower window. And going from there, it all just continues to stack and ramp from there. Trample. So this is where, you have to decide whether or not you want to take Trample. Trample now summons Landslide pillars of Earth during its duration. So it will summon landslide pillars, which you're now also going to be summoning multiple landslide pillars when you use trample, and it turns trample into an earth skill. So all those things previously that were beneficial for earth skills, trample is now benefiting from as well, and activating your fortify, your damage increases, etc. Pulverize is now also an earth skill. So again, here we go. You are transforming your werebear skills into earth skills as well, and those are going to scale and benefit from all these critical damage modifiers that we're getting on these earth effects right now, as well as the fortification increases. You should never have issues with fortification generation with the earth format Pulverize. When you have fortify, your earth skills gain +2 ranks. So this is free levels, damage, cooldown reduction increases on all of your earth skills just by having fortify, and you should always be max fortification on Earth Druid. This is one of the big ones that it stacks with. Earth skills deal 40% more critical strike damage to crowd controlled enemies. Enemies should always be crowd controlled in some format with the Earth Werebear skills between, Cyclone Armor slowing, or you're rooting targets with Storm Strike, or you're stunning them with Pulverize, and then, landsliding, because landslide, again, guaranteed critical. It's going to scale and benefit from all of these critical strike damage amplifiers that are at our disposal. And those are the main ones that you're primarily looking at for Druid. There was a previous aspect that we were considering that was while Hurricane is active, you get a +2 to your shapeshift skills. We're not really running Hurricane here. Didn't really feel it was necessary for the Earth format for the Werebear. But this one is going to bring you the damage consistency for that downtime on Overpower when it's, on cooldown for generating its 10 stacks to give you that next Overpower hit. Those landslide hits are going to really come in and fill in that downtime for you and bring in that missing DPS window that you need. Now, the second variant to this, and this is actually the one that I leveled with and have been running and what I use to farm my legendaries on, it's a little bit different, and it is a little bit more passive. The Earth build is much more active and requires constant using of your skills and generating your resource and whatnot. But the alternative build is a little more passive. You're still using the Pulverize, but you're actually using a lot of filler with Storm Strike. Storm Strike is actually really big filler for you. All right, so what you're going to do for this version is you're still going to start with Storm Strike. You're going to take the same attributes. This time, you're going to put the points into the same thing with Pulverize. A lot of the build is the same starting out. Now, you're going to take the Cyclone Armor and Earthen Barrier, Earthen Bulwark again. These are just still too good to not take. You will have a little more difficulty with fortification on this build initially. Late game, it won't be a problem because there are passives that are going to generate Fortify for you just by taking damage. Now, where it starts to get exciting and a little bit interesting is here we take Hurricane. Right, so we didn't take Hurricane in the previous one. We're going to take Hurricane here because this is a Storm skill, and this is important with the Storm skill being the thing. And this is going to slow targets for us, and we can go either option here for the vulnerability or damage reduction that targets deal. We are not taking Trample, and we're not taking these other attributes because we're not using Earth skills. So what we're actually going to be doing here is going into these other talents that are listed up here that actually have probably the most intricate, talent spread or connections out of any other tree alignment that you'll find. And from here, we actually are generating a bunch of passive lightning damage generation. And so this first talent here, Charged Atmosphere, every 18 seconds, and it's going to go down in duration each rank. A lightning strike will hit a nearby enemy, dealing 45% of your weapon damage. And it's going to scale up with that. The higher the weapon, the higher the damage. And so you can actually get that all the way down to 12 seconds, every 12 seconds, just as an extra lightning bolt that is going periodically. From there, we take Bad Omen, which is on your lucky hits, which Storm Strike has a 26% lucky hit chance, which across 4 targets being hit, that's not too bad. Those are pretty decent odds. And on the lucky hit, you actually have, if you rank it up, you have at rank 1, 10% chance when dealing damage to a vulnerable, immobilized, or stunned enemy, which Storm Strike alone always should be. You have the ability to immobilize and apply vulnerability, but if you really need to, Cyclone Armor, you can use it to apply vulnerability guaranteed. This will chance when you hit them to apply another lightning strike that will hit for even higher damage scaling, 55% damage, and this obviously goes up to 30% chance on those lucky hits to immobilized or stunned enemies or vulnerable enemies for this lightning bolt strike to occur. And so these are just extra passive lightning damage effects that are going to fill in, and these are going to be able to be procced from this can be procced from Hurricane. Every tick of Hurricane can proc this effect. So this is a really big opportunity to get a bunch of passive lightning bolt procs going on targets that you're hitting. It can proc off of the chain lightning from Storm Strike happening, and it's just a really nice passive form of damage that's going to fill in for that single target damage. Your AoE damage isn't really a problem. You get the mobs grouped up, you pulverize one time, all the baby mobs are dead, and then you're left with, if you don't one-shot the elites, you're left with that, you're left with the elite mobs or boss mobs to take care of. This is going to fill in that single target damage for you a little bit, as well as some of the aspect powers that we're going to show you. Now from there, you're going to skip anything else in the tree. We're not taking Trample, and we're actually taking Lacerate as an ultimate. Now, I know this one's a little weird to you to hear about, but the reason for it is related to an aspect power that we have, as well as it doubling as a defensive ability for us, plus that single target amplification, that we'd be looking for. So here, if you want, you have extra points. You have 2 extra points. You can either put it, 2 points into Pulverize, or you can put 2 more points into Storm Strike, because you will be using Storm Strike a lot. Or you can look to put more points into these passives here as well. If you want to just increase your lightning damage, you can put them into Electric Shock to increase the lightning damage that's dealt to the targets by a percentage instead. You can go that route. But later on into the build, you'll eventually want to go into Nature's Resolve, because you don't have a lot of fortified generation with the Storm variant for this build. And so you'll have a % chance when struck to fortify yourself for a base life, assuming it stacks up to 15%, with 5% chance at each rank. So 15% chance when you're struck to gain fortify. You're going to have no problem generating fortification. It's also here, increase the amount of fortify you gain from all sources. This whole thing is fortify generation on this node. So if you're not getting it from your abilities, you'll get it passively here in your ult passive nodes. So that's really powerful there. Now, the reason for Lacerate is we're going to talk about our equipment that is actually on this character a little bit. Now, Cyclone Armor, we've already shown. Cyclone Armor, same situation. It's really great for what it is. For damage reduction, we have not been able to get any Pulverize modifiers on any of our builds at this time. So our Pulverize is actually kind of wimpy from what it could be, but we haven't been able to get any of the Pulverize increasing legendaries at this time. And so what we've actually been using, we've been going a one-hander for our lightning build. And the reason for this is so that we get an additional aspect power, and so that we have faster attacks with our Storm Strike in order to get more of these lightning procs rolling. And so with this imprint, lucky hit, up to a 10% chance when you deal lightning damage to overload a target. So when you deal lightning damage, so Storm Strike, for example, or any of our lightning bolt procs, all right, you have a chance to overload the target for 3 seconds, and any direct damage that is caused during that time will cause the target to pulse for 308 additional damage to themselves, as well as in an AoE. There is no internal cooldown on this pulse effect. So while Hurricane is spinning for its, overtime damage, every single hit from Hurricane will proc this damage, as well as every hit from Crows will proc this damage. Every hit from Lacerate, which has 10 hits, will proc this damage. So this just further steroid amplifies that single target output that you're able to get with Lacerate from this effect itself. And it's very obvious when this proc does happen. There's a very distinct visual effect that goes on with it. From there, we're going to go and we're going to talk about... See, I really don't have a lot for my Pulverize. I haven't gotten any of it. This is the other one, the other legendary effect, and that is the critical storms. Critical strikes with storm skills. So your Hurricane, your Cyclone Armor, your Storm Strike, critical strikes with storm skills charge the air around you, yourself, for 1.3 seconds and cause lightning strikes to periodically strike in the area for 460 lightning damage, and the duration becomes extended every time you critically strike. So it's actually really easy to get this cranked up to where it's just lasting for, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute even. And so this is another lightning bolt that is striking periodically at your target. So in the single target environments with bosses or elites and whatnot, you're actually getting a lot of passive damage generation by just using Storm Strike and getting these lightning proc effects to occur that are going to function as your filler damage while you're waiting for your pulverizes. It's a much more passive play style, not as engaging as the Earth style, but it is an alternative, especially if you're just trying to work with what you're given, and it's not as reliant on your aspect powers. It's actually very reliant on its individual aspect powers that benefit from it, but you don't need as many aspect powers. This one's universally good. This aspect power skills deal up to % increased damage based on your available primary resource when you cast. Receive the max benefit while you have full primary resource. So, this is another one that will just, all build universally be beneficial to you. And so, those are the main things. And so with that, you end up with a lot of passive lightning damage just to fill things in. And so, again, you have Storm Strike, you have Pulverize, you have your 2 defensives here, and then you have Hurricane, and you have the ultimate. So you're going to be doing a lot of storm striking with this build. This build actually, I think, will become more of a werewolf build because there's a werewolf thing for Shred. There's a legendary that turns Shred to apply a lightning effect that also functions as AoE, as well as something that makes Claw into a storm skill that will simultaneously cast Storm Strike. But that requires a unique, so we're not able to really test that out at this time, but there's room for it in the future. So that is the rundown of what we were running, and it's been really fun overall. Druid's been great for me. It's been very comfortable and cozy. We've been doing we've been doing all this on hardcore. So, if you have any questions and you want to pop in on stream while we're live, twitch.tv/Zav is where you can find us. More than happy to answer any questions or show you anything regarding the builds. But as of this time, there hasn't been any content that we haven't been able to do with it. And I hope you give some of these builds a try, modify them yourselves, make some changes, try stuff out, have fun with it, and, take care and have a good one.